All right, I need to address the elephant in the room. Or is it the balloon in the sky? What's the metaphorical idiom we are using these days to say that we have some pretty big problems? And Biden gave an update on the State of the Union. Let me explain. It's the end of the world as we know it, and I don't feel so fine. President Joe Biden mustered up or was pumped full of something enough to get him through the annual bloviation known as the State of the Union, in which he kept saying he wants to finish the job.
So I've come to fulfill my constitutional obligation to report in the State of the Union. And here's my report. Because the soul of this nation is strong, because the backbone of this nation is strong, because the people of this nation are strong, the State of the Union is strong.
Is it? Is that how you feel at home right now? Or is it closer to this line?
Americans are tired of being. We're tired of being played for suckers.
So here's a fun fact. This is the first time an octogenarian gave the State of the Union. And it showed.
I'm not new to this place. I stand here tonight having served as long as about any one of you have ever served here. But I've never been more optimistic about our future, about the future of America. We just have to remember who we are. We're the United States of America, and there's nothing beyond our capacity.
Couple things. It's not a positive that you have been in government for 50 years. And yes, that really is life for him. Remembering who he is and trying to enunciate.
Make no mistake. If you try anything to raise the cost of producing jobs, I will veto it.
Veto what? What? Folks, look, that speech sure did disappoint for all of us sufferers who watched, so you definitely did not have to. I'm just doing my best to give you the highest of the lowlights. No, I'm serious. And Joe's fired up about it.
Name me a world leader who changed places with Xi Jinping. Name me one. We used to be #1 in the world in infrastructure. We've sunk to 13th in the world. The United States of America, 13th in the world in infrastructure, modern infrastructure. Urban, rural, tribal. And folks, we're just getting started.
Here's the long and short of it. Or the loud and quiet, if you will. The speech was confusing, almost as much as Joe was. He slurred his words often, he was weirdly focused on McDonald's and lowering resort fees, and then he got heckled a few times for giving the usual lies.
Some of my Republican friends want to take the economy hostage. I get it, unless I agree to their economic plans. All of you at home should know what those plans are. Instead of making the wealthy pay their fair share, some Republicans want Medicare and Social Security to sunset. I'm not saying it's a majority. Let me give you, anybody who doubts it, contact my office. I'll give you a copy. I'll give you a copy of the proposal. That means Congress doesn't vote. Well, I'm glad to see you. No, I tell you, I enjoy conversion.
All right. Well, since I know you had much more important and beneficial things to do on any given Tuesday night than to watch that, please let me know in the comments. How did you spend your time instead of watching the State of the Union? Because I'm guessing you were actually bettering the state of this union. Not like this point Joe was trying to make, but just prove the case for the Republicans regarding oil.
They invested too little of that profit to increase domestic production. And when I talk to a couple of them, they say, we're afraid you're going to shut down all the oil wells, all the oil refineries anyway, so why should we invest in them? I said, we're going to need oil for at least another decade. And that's going to exceed and beyond that. We're going to need it. Production. If they had, in fact, invested in the production to keep gas prices down.
Yeah, at least that long with oil. But don't explain truth. Make sure to put the blame on the usual suspects.
Inflation has been a global problem because the pandemic disrupted our supply chains, and Putin's unfair and brutal war in Ukraine disrupted energy supplies as well as food supplies, blocking all that grain in Ukraine.
And the rain in Spain stays mainly in the plain. You know, I must say it was rather boring to watch the two people behind Joe Biden. And that brings us to... Where in the world is Kamalama Ding Dong? Yes, the usual plotting was being done by Kamala throughout the speech. It's just what she does when she's not serving up an unhealthy word salad.
I'll speak in a moment about the fact that I think most of us who are devout public servants understand that we in government have great possibility in terms of the range at which we work as government. But when we are joined with our friends in the private sector, we can take advantage of the skills and the innovation that they so uniquely in so many situations are able to accomplish and grow.
Yeah, I'm guessing she gave her husband more than a word salad after seeing his greeting given to the greatest doctor of all doctors, named Dr. J, who didn't play basketball. And then the even weirder part was at the beginning of Biden's speech, when acknowledging them, there was an awkwardly long applause for them, as if they were actually the president.
Our First Lady and Second Gentleman, good to see you guys up there. Members of Congress. By the way, Chief Justice, I may need a court order. She gets to go to the game tomorrow, next week. I have to stay home.
No one cares about you, Joe. And the game is not tomorrow or next week. It's this weekend on Super Bowl Sunday. But, right? See what I mean about that long applause? And also, did you notice who was in front of the new power couple? Paul David Hewson. You may know him as Bono. And next to him was another Paul Pelosi, the husband of the Nancy Pelosi, former Speaker of the House. He was likely invited there to provide some advice to all the members of Congress. Advice like which stocks to invest in and when exactly to pull their money from certain stocks so they can, what did Kamala say? Accomplish and grow their bank accounts. But I know Nancy disagrees with such an assessment. And when she disagrees with something being done, she gets feisty and vindictive.
God bless America. Thank you very much.
I'm always dignified. I thought that was a very dignified act compared to my exuberance, as I said.
Sure. Kevin McCarthy sitting behind Biden during the State of the Union was much more boring, but still not as boring as what Joe was proclaiming, especially invoking his dad, per always.
I know a lot of you always kid me for always quoting my dad, but my dad used to say, Joey, a job's about a lot more than a paycheck. He really would say this. It's about a lot more than a paycheck. It's about your dignity. It's about respect. It's about being able to look your kid in the eye and say, honey, it's going to be okay. Lay in bed at night like my dad did, staring at the ceiling, wondering what in God's name happens if your spouse gets cancer.
Well, to invoke another very old man, here's Bernie Sanders, bored out of his gourd, but protected by the mask, and now his eyes can see again. So he got something out of that speech. You know, back in Joe's dad's day, these speeches weren't quite so long and probably were just presented in written form because that's how Thomas Jefferson did it, and Joe's ancient, so his dad was probably alive during the early administrations of this country. Anyway, I could have saved a lot of wasted time with the fake clapping, the drugs that were needed to keep half of those in attendance appearing alive for the entire time, and all the rigmarole that comes with that nonsense. There's your State of the Union. I spy with my big brother eye. Well, there goes our hopes and dreams. By now you've seen with your own eyes, or at least heard about the big balloon in the sky last week that was a Chinese spy balloon traveling coast to coast. And the president's response was...
On Wednesday, when I was briefed on the balloon, I ordered the Pentagon to shoot it down on Wednesday as soon as possible.
I know what I said. I don't have to have it read back to me like I'm...
Why the two orders?
They decided that the best time to do that was as it got over water outside within the 12-mile limit. They successfully took it down.
Sometimes men take matters into their own hands.
No, sir. You made it clear just a moment ago that your men never take matters in their own hands. Your men follow orders or people die.
You were saying the recommendation was from your national security.
I told them to shoot it down.
You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
What does this mean for China, relations with China?
Yes. That's a commander-in-chief right not there. Our speedy military response is days later. But I get it now. The Biden administration was just showing us how inflation works. So that balloon was inflated, much like the cost of all the basic goods you buy. And then it was just allowed to float across the whole nation to remind everyone just how bad it is. But apparently not that bad, according to Megan McArdle, opinion columnist for The Washington Post. She says eggs are cheaper than you think, as the picture of eggs on the column at a standard Kroger grocery store shows $7.99 for a dozen eggs. She lives in reality, much like all the hosts on The View, especially Whoopi Goldberg, who had some choice words about the Chinese spy balloon.
Well, listen, we spy on them, they spy on us, we find out stuff, they find out stuff, and the world keeps going around.
That's one way to put it. And she's okay with it since it's more politically persuasive to her. The Chinese are buying all of the unsold copies of her movies, after all. And there are a lot of unsold copies of Eddie out there because hoofda. But there is another way to put it. Like from the White House press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, who continues to be so very awful at her job.
Yeah, so look, I think that, and we have talked about this before, about how when the PRC government surveillance balloons transited the continental U.S. briefly, at least 3 times, as you just mentioned, during the president's prior administration, and once that we know of the beginning of this administration's, but never for this duration of time, as we know. This information was discovered prior to the administration left, but the intelligence community, as I said, is prepared to give briefings to key officials. But this is something. Post. Yeah. But this is something that they were not aware of, as we've just laid out.
What in the Sam Hill did she just say? What was just laid out, other than a page from the recipe book of Kamala's word salads? You got me. All right, that's enough. I stayed up way too late dealing with this nonsense. Forget all that happened with the State of the Union, but don't forget your F's. Faith, family, and friends. And feel free to share this video before another Chinese spy balloon is overhead, which means you better do it fast. Until next time, stay healthy, America.